As the second sign, we're now coming to Taurus. So on your index card, you want to write down Taurus, inner side or yin Venus. Because Taurus is a yin sign and Venus rules over Taurus and over the yang sign Libra. Of course, it is only one Venus, but it's always good to know, this is more the inner related one, the Venus archetypes, because there are many archetypes in Venus that we find in Libra the same way as in Taurus, but the one time it's like in and the other side is more like extroverted. So you write like Taurus, inner side of Venus or yin Venus and the second house, and as the subtitle, eventually in green, it is earth, it is fix, and it is yin. After that throb and boost of outbursting energy during Aries, when the new cycle of nature has started, as Germans say, the trees kick out, after that first month, when the sun enters Taurus, nature starts to morph its appearance in a form that she dresses herself in beautiful colors, the flowers are coming out, the trees are blooming, you have scents in the air that are almost erotic, everything is just in the most beautiful garment, because nature does something that is essential for worldly life, and that's the archetype of Taurus, survival. Taurus is everything about worldly survival, which implies, as cookbook astrology says, money, belongings, stocks, whatever kind of things. But essentially it is only about survival, of sustaining life. And therefore, in order to sustain life, you are building now, or within the archetype of Taurus, you're building or you're connecting to your inner resources. It's the archetype of your inner resources. It's the archetype of your God-given or karma-given treasure chamber. That means, as Taurus is the second sign and correlates in any given chart with the second house, the sign on the house cusp, where's the planetary ruler? Are there eventual planets in the second house? Where's the natural ruler, which is always Venus? Where's the natural sign? Are there any planets in there? If you do that meaningful sentences steps, you will see what a person has as their resources in order to sustain their life, in order to make a living, in order to be in alignment with one's treasures, abilities, belongings, not material belongings. Because everything in the material world will fade, latest when you have your last breath. But there is another treasure chamber of your real abilities, right? So basically, Taurus is the archetype to be in a relationship, Venus being the goddess of love, in a relationship with your own inner resources that enable you to survive in a meaningful way. Because Taurus is a sensual sign. It is the archetype, when I say Taurus, I always mean the inner Venus and the second house. Taurus is the archetype of sensuality and of our senses, which we have 5 usually. Some might have additional ones, but commonly 5. So all senses except the visual sense. The visual sense belongs, as we said this morning, to the sun and the moon. But all the other senses, taste, scent, touch, and hearing or listening, are the archetypes, essential archetypes of Taurus, and therefore of Venus. Of the yin Venus, ruler of Taurus, natural ruler of the second house, and also of Libra. But in Libra I listen outside, whereas in Taurus I listen inside, to the inner, but not to the never-ending blah 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 of our mind, which belongs to the ego, but to that what we need. So Taurus is the archetype that we can sense by listening to our senses. What do I need now in order to survive in a meaningful way? And by using my senses and being allowed culturally, conditionally, like by conditioning by the society, being allowed to listen to my senses, which many religions have judged and labeled as evil, that word comes from Eve, right? So we know what we're talking about. By listening to the senses and listening inside, what do I need right now for a meaningful survival? And when I realize, when I can sense, oh, this is what I need, you usually have a sensual reaction with that. And everything we can sense as valuable or as good for us, we give it value and meaning. So Taurus in the second house is also how we validate something. What we validate. Make sense? So the validation is actually the result of an inner process of listening to your own needs. And because the Venus as a planet is the ruler of the heart chakra, not of the physical heart. The organ, the physical heart, is ruled by the sun. But the heart chakra is the Venus. So when I have a loving relationship to myself, that's the most healthiest archetype of Taurus. A loving relationship to myself. Not in terms of, oh, I'm Ulrich, I'm big shot, blah, blah, blah. That's nothing. But if I have a caring, loving, sensual, respectful relationship to my inner self, based on what my resources are, that I allow myself to validate because they enable me to survive, then I give myself value. And then I give myself self-love, not in an egotistic way, as many people mix it up, but in a loving way, in a validating way. And when I do that, and when I become aware, what do I have to survive, i.e. the resources, abilities, etc., and what do I need, which often I find in my resources, there are certain things I don't have, right? Which is tricky, because Venus is also the ruler of the seventh sign, the Libra. And from Taurus to Libra, it's a 150-degree angle, which is an inconjunct. There's a crisis. Each of us has some things she does not have, which we then are forced, due to the crisis of the inconjunct, to look in the world of the others, Libra, to say, could you please help me? Right? But it's always a kind of a crooked balance between the Taurus and the Libra thing. Because if you are too much in your Taurus thing, oh no, I'm fine, right? Kind of like, we'll get to that. Then you might isolate yourself from social interactions. If you have no sense about your inner resources, because there was like a parental upgrowing or religious upgrowing or social upgrowing, were essential needs. Archetype of Venus, second house, needs. Venus, seventh house, is also needs, but that's the needs of the others or from the others. But inside the Taurus, second house, it's my needs. I need to go sleep. I need to have a glass of water. I need to withdraw from the world for a day. That's needs for myself. I don't need anyone for that, right? So if I am able to have my needs met, I create a self-reliant archetype, self-reliance, a self-loving, it's also an archetype, a self-caring, self-validating relationship to myself. And that is something that's most rarely to be found on this planet, and especially in the Western world. And the reason again is our cultural religious traditions And therefore, we are all needy because I cannot live in my second house. So therefore, my Venus has to look in the seventh house. Who can I somehow have met, to get something, right? And if not, we have a whole industry that tells us if you buy this product, then you feel better. No. The power of no. I always wanted to write a book, not the power of now, the power of no. Anyway. So what actually happens, the moment when you are creating this self-reliance, you become quite independent, right? Self-reliant. And because Taurus makes a trine, 120-degree angle to Virgo, you become discriminative of what is right for you and what is not right. Discrimination is Virgo archetype. So you're able to say, no, I'm going to the steakhouse with you, but I need fish right now, so I order the one and only fish on that menu. But because our societies, especially through the Jewish Christian upbringing, in whatever kind of aspects, like a simple example, which I love. Every child, every animal, every being smells the food. It's a natural instinct because the smell, the ability to perceive scent, to validate is that good for me or is it not good for me, is essential. It's essential for creating a healthy inner relationship to my own department of resources and needs. But there are many cultures that do not allow the child to smell the food because the mom goes, I cooked the food, you don't smell, da-da-da. There are other cultures, like in Russia, as far as I know, it is polite to smell the food because you're basically, it's like it's the preparation to eat. Trying to use better language. So we could basically say if a child is allowed to smell the food and eat as much as it needs relative to its senses, taste, feeling in the digestive and scent, it will naturally develop a healthy relationship to its own resources, to its own needs. Which later on, because we're talking about needs in the second house and sensuality and senses. So at one point in life, when puberty kicks in, the second house is also the archetype of our sexual needs and our sexual resources. Meaning, what do I like? What turns me on? What gives me a good sensual feeling? We're not talking about the Aries archetype. That was sexual instincts. Ooh, done. Yeah? But here we talk about sensuality. Yeah? Whatever, all these beautiful kind of things. Sensuality. In most societies, that's very suppressed. I mean, is it 100 years ago? Probably, I think like with the invention of penicillin with tuberculosis, they finally stopped saying that. We Germans call it like making love to yourself. The Anglo-Saxon language chooses the word which sounds much more clinic, masturbation. Yeah, that's like. Right? But in other countries, the word for that is making love to yourself. And we have a very simple proof that this is an archetype. There are some exceptions, of course, but that's abuse exceptions. Every youngster, when the sexuality starts to begin to blossom, will have the first sexual experience with themselves. They touch themselves, they explore themselves, they try to figure these things out, and those kind of things. Everybody. And that is essential, because when I'm able to figure this out, I will know via discrimination, trying to Virgo, with whom I'm going to hop in my bedroom and with whom not. And if someone does this touch or that touch, and I know this is not my thing, and I don't have like some experimental tendencies, then it's just not my thing. Make sense? So if I allow my child to smell the foods and eat as much, I can guarantee it will have a good sex life later, a healthy one. If I don't, if it's forbidden, how should the person be able to discriminate who's the right partner? Choosing the partner usually happens via pheromones, right? We all know that when a relationship is really over, but we hold on to that, and at one point we cannot smell the person anymore, right? Is that the face of memories? Sorry. So anyway, to put that like in a context, everything about sensuality, about building a healthy, stable, nurturing in terms of self-reliant relationship relative to your needs, relative to your resources, that enables you to be self-reliant. I love this word, self-reliant. Under all circumstances, you can say, I'm able to survive. And not because I have like a stock market or a Mercedes-Benz, but because I have that good insight that I know what I can, what I have, what I need, how to validate that, to say yes and no when I mean yes and no. That's big. I mean, very simple, but for most people, a lot of biggie. So with this whole composé of sensuality, resources, and sexual needs, Taurus and the second house is one of the most important houses that if you want to do astrology readings and you find evolutionary astrology or other things too complicated, and you only offer readings, I tell you what your resources are, what you need in life, for you to be in alignment with who you really are. Like, like a gardener. If you have like sunflowers need a certain soil, need a lot of water and a lot of sun. So if you're born a sunflower, but the society puts you like in a shadow behind like the trees and doesn't give you a lot of water, you might even feel that you're worthless because you're not coming to blossom. Right? Understand my comparison? So basically, if you would do the exercising of meaningful sentences, just drawing a second house on a piece of paper, throw any sign on it, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, whatever. The planetary ruler is somewhere in another house and sign. And then make step-by-step analysis. And you start doing that, you will be amazed what you figure out. If you go with a question, what does this person have in order to survive? What does this person need or have in terms of how could it make money in modern language? Right? If there's someone with let's say, Aries on the second house, that means this person needs to be independent, right? This person needs to be physical. This person does not have to have a lot of like concepts, right? Let's say Mars would be in the second house too, or in the first house. And this person is now forced by the father or by the parents to do a insurance job, right? Sitting like behind a desk and like punching in stupid numbers in a stupid machine, then it's a time bomb, right? So you can do great, great service just by the analysis of the second house. Because basically, to refer back to that, we have the second house, the love of my heart chakra to that what I have, what enables me to survive, and what I have to give, but also what I need. If that is in a healthy state, which in most people it is not, my tendency to go into relationship with the world of others, the Libra, the other sign, is so very different. Because then I go into the world of others as a not needy person. That's the one trick. And I'm going to add something, even though that's far ahead. There are astrology teachings that have to do with the, is it octave? Like a high tone voice, Octave. The higher octave of Venus is Neptune. Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So if you imagine, we have Aries here, we have Taurus here, and we have Pisces behind or above Aries. Pisces, like Taurus, forms a 150-degree angle to Libra. Crises. Mosquito, right? No matter how you do it, it doesn't match. But Taurus and Libra and Taurus are ruled by Venus. So if we manage something with our Venus issue, and we are not looking into the world of others, 7th house or Libra, but try to find most inside, right? And that what we do not find inside that I have, but yet sense that I need, I do not address it to the 7th house crooked 150-degree angle to the others, but I do the sextile, 60-degree angle, from Taurus up to Pisces, the source, the divine, the God, the self. Then you see your life blooming. Then you become completely independent. And because, do you understand the thing? That's the whole trick. If you ever have a need, I would highly recommend, close your eyes, go into your heart and say, God or Father or Divine Mother, doesn't matter, I need. Please. I give you my need of. And you will see miraculously, it will manifest from anywhere. From anywhere. It's just amazing. That's the real trick. What most people don't know and most people don't practice. So what most people do is, their 2nd house is kind of like underdeveloped due to social religious conditioning. Yeah? Even more so if it's like gender issues, like girls don't do that, blah, 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 this whole man-made crap. So they are not allowed to rely to their resources that they have in order to survive and make a meaningful living, whatever that is, right? I mean, I have Taurus on the 2nd house cusp, just because my chart is like Aries rising, Taurus on the 2nd house cusp. My Venus is in the 11th house Aquarius. So I have the craziest way to survive, right? I mean, we have a Sunday, I'm standing in Calgary, we're filming, right? Yeah. This is not the mainstream way to make money after like traveling for 36 hours, right? Make sense? So if I would not know astrology, I would judge myself for that. Yeah? You should get a real job, this is not a way of living, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. But because of astrology, I know this is my nature. So I embrace what is given symbolically and understand it, and my heart smiles. So work is not like, oh, I have to work. It is joy. Because when the heart smiles, you have joy. Right? But as most people don't have that for many, many reasons, and that's why I said, like, if you're only doing astrology readings, determining for half an hour how the 2nd house of your client is, what their abilities are, just like give them the essence from your index cards. You will see that they will react because there is a stranger, Mrs. or Mr. Astrologer. Yeah? And you tell them what they always knew, but they were forbidden to embrace. This is such a revelation for them, and that will give them the first support. But as most people don't have that, the 2nd house is not fed well, right? So we have this inconjunct to the 7th house or Libra. In a crisis way, I need to go now out of my own resources of being self-reliant and go like, do you like me? Do you like me? I become needy, right? And if I don't do that sextile to Pisces, my inner self, meaning not Ulrich self, the one self, the divine, the God, whatever, if I build a easy relationship, because we heard that a sextile is basically a lazy aspect. I don't have to do anything. I just pick up the phone and go like, God, I love you, please. Done. Right? We don't even have to say thank you. I mean, we can, because God does not need our gratitude, but we need to remember being grateful, right? Because that brings humbleness. But if you do that, if you have this relationship to your inner God, then everything is possible, and because you have that relationship, nothing is needed anymore. That's the funny thing. Like in India, they say, when you're a friend with a boss, even the doorman helps you. It's true, right? Make sense? Because most people don't have that inner relationship to their God. What they actually do is they also project their need for divinity, for unconditional love, for sense of being home, which is only to be found inside, as Mr. Jesus, whose name was Jeshua, said. They project it also onto the seventh house cusp, via the other inconjunct, out of a crisis, out of a lack. So now you are Mr. Seventh House, and there is Mrs. or Mr. X that projects their neediness because they do not find it themselves, and they project their God on you. And at one point, of course, you cannot meet that expectation because you're not God, as long as you're in this physical body, right? So the whole disappointments about a relationship comes from that, two inconjuncts, from an unhealthy second house and a not developed natural spirituality. I find this is just so amazing. I could talk for hours, but that's basically the Taurus thing, right? And there was something else I wanted to say, reading that from my head. Of course, it does have to do with money. Yeah? It does have to do with belongings, but that is very superficial. I mean, you will see that whenever we will go or come to a yin sign, I will talk much, much more, because the yin signs in astrology, in the man-made astrology, are so poorly understood. Poorly. As Noel Till once said, if you have a chart of a client, you're preparing a chart, and this client has like 7 planets in Taurus in the second house, and you're doing all your homeworks, like reading from other books, and you're preparing to talk with him about Wall Street, money, investments, those kind of things, and then there walks in a Tibetan monk. What are you going to do? Because a Tibetan monk can have a very strong second house, right? But he does not have stocks in the Wall Street. So the whole thing is about the self-love and self-nurturing, right? And there's a last archetype which is also important. In India, there's a saying about the frog in the well. It's the story that like a little frog was living in a kind of like half dried out well down at the very bottom, and had like a little paddle of water, and it lived there. And from time to time there was like an insect or a fly, finish. He had water, looked through this tunnel, saw a little bit of sky, and said like, oh, this must be the universe. So being so isolated in its own well, it started to call the paddle ocean, the little dry sand continent, and this little hole up there, the universe. And stayed in that second house, earth, fixed yin energy, change resistant. That's a little the danger of Taurus, right? Taurus can sometimes sit out the things for much too long, right? But they're just sit, right? So in that story, like an ocean frog comes to visit and hops down into the well. That would be if the Libra Venus from the 7th house, or the Libra 7th sign, would jump into the 2nd house. And now we have a crisis in conjunct of value systems. Value systems is Venus, right? So the ocean frog goes like, oh my God, it's damp in here, and it's narrow, and it's like, oh, how can you live here? No, this is the ocean, this is the continent. Look, I see the whole universe. The ocean frog bursts out laughing. So long story short, the ocean frog convinces the frog in the well to come out to see the world, and that frog then explodes because it's too big. I think, Indian drama at the end, Bollywood. But the interesting thing is, we always are in a kind of a crisis between wanting to just be in our little well, right? When we have enough. I just have 6 weeks behind me in Turkey where I did nothing, nada, right? It's my winter hibernation time, Oh, I have to clip my fingernails. Tomorrow, it's like, right? You're just sitting there, right? Lovely. But at one point, you have to get out again. There's some people that might not do that, so they like bottling themselves up. And that's when usually this inconjunct attracts another person into your life that brings you a crisis with your values. And because Scorpio is the sign that is opposing to Taurus, there will be confrontation. And out of this confrontation, a metamorphosis, meaning the frog in the well will never call that paddle, an ocean. So this is like, life is always going through those kind of things. Yeah. So there is the archetype of like the frog in the well, being stuck inside. Right? And of course, Taurus therefore can be also the archetype of lazy. But I don't mean it in a judgmental way. Yeah? I once had a flatmate in Laguna Beach. He was very Taurus. He was working hard, but when he would come home, like on Saturday afternoon, he worked on a farm, like a dog breeding farm. He would come home, take a shower, and would disappear in his room until Monday morning. He would not even go to the bathroom. I had no idea. Probably he set it out, So, they can just sit and snuggle up with themselves and turn off the world. Oh yeah, I have to go to the bathroom. No, not too much work, too much movement. So there can be a certain archetype of laziness, but there can be also very nurturing. It always depends on rebalancing oneself. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's basically the archetype of Taurus.
Free your mind.
Remember times without time.
Free